Welcome to the TowerCast podcast, the towering podcast for the towering filmmaker. How's it going, everybody? I am your host, Juan Paul Flores Vasquez, here with some wonderful filmmakers, the towering filmmakers of El Paso and the TowerCast network. We are looking at you with episode 3. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let me just go ahead and introduce the room. Michael De La O.
Hello, guys. Welcome again.
Yes, sir. Carlos De La Torre.
What's going on, guys? What's going on? Thank you for tuning in.
John Eric Castro.
What's up, guys? Get ready for a good episode.
Austin Young, Honey Badger in the house.
Honey Badger.
And we have a very guest already. Here he is, Carlos Jr. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Saludos.
Awesome, man.
What's going on, man? What's going on?
It's very cool to meet you virtually. I know that right now we're still doing the whole social distancing thing, but I just want to say thank you for joining us, man. And it seems like all of us are going to be introduced to you, and hopefully we dive into a nice little rabbit hole of your world, man. So apart from that, how are you doing?
I'm good. Busy. Everything is really insane today, right now, like the last 2 weeks. And I'm really, really fired up, I think.
All right.
Well, I mean, one thing that Michael De La O has told us about you is he's really hyped you up, man, over the past couple of days. He's really hyped you up.
I've tried.
He's succeeded in that.
Yep.
And one of the things that we just know about you right off the bat is that you're a true artist, a prodigy, if you will. You play the guitar. I see it back there. I know that you're a filmmaker and you're a storyteller with a heart of gold. So it's going to be very cool to just, get a good scope of who you are and why you do what you do. It's been quite a journey for us, the Towering Filmmakers. Thank you for joining us on Spotify, iTunes, the Anchor listeners. Enjoy the View YouTube. It's nice to open up to a new wave of filmmakers now that we have, around here in the neck of the woods. Carlos, can you take us through your filmmaking journey? Where did your hero's journey begin?
Ooh, hero. I don't know. I don't think that's what I would call myself at all.
Humble.
Any filmmaker who loves cinema and is chasing that dream is a hero to us, man. So
Exactly.
you're a hero to us, brother.
Exactly.
I think if I really, really opened up about where, like where my intentions and where like my desire comes from, we would probably last an entire night, talking. But I became a filmmaker. It was sort of like a maturing process. I haven't been a filmmaker for that long. I mean, it's probably been 3 actual years. 3 summers ago, I attended a class by a role model of mine, of which I have plenty. A person named Ilana Lapid. I took a class with her, and we sort of explored like the power that film has to have social impact. We kind of talked about documentary, but I don't know, like I was going through like a political maturity, I think, and I was beginning to sort of understand how I felt about things, and I was communicating them, I think, in a very strong way. But I didn't have a medium to document my activism and to document the activism and the ideas of the people around me. So when I was sort of in the perfect place at the right time with the perfect person, and after that course that I took 3 summers ago, my life sort of spinned, and I decided that I am a director, film director. And
I have a question for you before we kind of get into that a little deeper. Did the love of music and being an artist, for music, did that come before or after you kind of discovered?
I've been a musician for a long time now.
Awesome. I think it's important that we talk about that, because it feels like in the arts, that's where your roots started, right? And then that evolved into filmmaking and you started using both. Correct me if I'm wrong here.
I always have a purpose for doing something.
Sure.
And I used to be very religious. I used to be very Catholic. I was a catechist. I played music at church like extensively. It was my obsession. And I sort of went through an indescribable moment, but if I kind of called it a breakup with God or a breakup with my faith, and I sort of had like this artistic void, like I had the desire to do something and to speak, because I have to, and I took a pause for music for a few years, because music and God were sort of the same thing for me. And losing God meant I lost music for a while, and I've discovered film. And thankfully, I've been able to unite both of those, I think, expressions, even though they're almost the same thing.
I think that's really cool because we did get to see your films, and I'm sure Juan has some questions about each of them. But I love the detail in your film.
Does Your Heart Break?
Does Your Heart Break? Oof. And we'll get into that right now. But I just wanted to bring up that I haven't met too many people that have kind of crossed that same bridge as me, man. I'm the same way, except I was, I can't say I was Christian. I am Christian, and I still believe in God, and my faith hasn't really been shaken. However, I grew up in church. Same thing, man. Like I grew up in church entirely, and I was a musician in my church as well. And I played guitar and drums and all this stuff in my church. I had my own band Christian band that we toured for a couple years and kind of went through that route of music. Mm-hmm. And then I fell in love with filmmaking, and I found filmmaking and kind of found the camaraderie in filmmaking was, to a certain point, started to become more fulfilling than the camaraderie I wasn't receiving at my church. So I kind of agree with you. I didn't lose my faith. If anything, I lost the ability to
continue that structure.
That structure of church and man, and how sometimes the whole purpose of a church is so that you convene with other people that believe the same thing you do. That's it. And my philosophy of a church has always been this: if a church to me is a spiritual, religious, whatever gym where you go and work out your spiritual muscles. That's pretty much how I've always seen it. You pay tithes like you pay a gym membership. You contribute money. Just kind of so that to keep the lights on, and contribute to something you're believing in. So I felt, a lot of the camaraderie and the brotherhood that I felt at church kind of started losing its way. I don't know if it's just because everybody started getting busy and lived life and did their own things. But I'm with you on that road, man. I think I've always wanted to express in film, and I haven't yet. It's a project of mine I really want to explore is a story of somebody who's grown up in that structure, and has either fallen in love with the structure or, like you said, fallen in love with the spiritual aspect of it, and fallen out of love with that. So I think that's really, really important. And Does Your Heart Break really does reflect that, man. So I can appreciate that on another level. I think more than it being a terrific film, and it aesthetically very beautiful. The music is fantastic. The direction is great. And so, but more than that, on a level of just human connection, I really did connect with that. So kudos, man. Kudos for sure.
Definitely. And there's a lot to talk about in terms of unpacking like your visual style and what you choose to seek after in terms of story. You have your heart in many cooking pots. Experience is not only like your middle name, but it's also your expertise. And just in talking about you, going back to what you were talking about earlier, you talked a lot about how the world started to kind of unfold in front of you, and you began to formulate sort of like the fire that you kind of had in your hands. Can you take us through your filmography in terms of, like, for example, I know that you were a student at NMSU, and their mission statement is be bold, shape the future. How has NMSU shaped your future?
NMSU itself, I don't know. I haven't really reflected on what NMSU itself or what even the program did for me. I got very lucky with the people that I encountered. I have plenty of, all my professors for the most part were professors, and they were good, but I sort of, again, right place, right time. I met my mentor there. His name is Julian Alexander, and we
know Julian, the actor.
Yeah. Well,
man. We've been trying to connect to do something with Tower for a long time, man. He's a fantastic actor. He's
a fantastic director too, and everything. He's a great human being. I mentioned Ilana Lapid, and also another professor of mine, Dr. Julia. Having all three of these like just creative like super forces was, they sort of like created an environment for me to be able to
grow artistically.
Honestly, like the environment that they created for me was to just do what I want, like just go for it. And all of us, and me, in maybe a more dramatic way, always overthink things. I have a project and I say, I mean, all of us want to do things right and perfect. And I think that's a good instinct. But we take so long to start something. And they were the kind of people that just do shit. They just do it.
You know what I find interesting about this part of your journey, Carlos, is what I think is fascinating for any filmmakers that listening out there who think a film school is super essential. I've always said, man, like the program at UTEP, what that afforded me is to meet people that are like-minded. That's it. Beyond that, the program didn't really inflict any creative or any technical or specific things. If anything, it was just more meeting people in the same program that wanted to be filmmakers, that loved cinema. And that's really it, dude. And that's interesting because the NMSU film program, it's more sophisticated than the UTEP one, man. I've heard that from a lot of people.
I definitely don't want to misspeak. Like the program itself, the Creative Media Institute is, I think I would almost call it fantastic. Like it's fantastic for the resources that it has and the accessibility. I did learn a lot of technical. I'm not a very technical. Well, I kind of am a technical person, but when it comes to camera work and things like that, I'm not very technical. But it was comprehensive. And I'm glad that's where I ended up. Because Amy, Lanasa, and the rest of the professors, and they created like an environment that really sort of felt like a tiny film industry. They had real equipment and there was a process, and sometimes the process was frustrating or it felt cumbersome in the moment. But I think it trained me in a proper way, and the opportunities that I've had to work in Albuquerque in the industry, I felt like I had a leg up because I came from CMI. I mean, also the people that I worked with in Albuquerque come from CMI or very similar programs. So the program itself is pretty great, but that's not the magic,
Right.
What I love about Break Your Heart is that, one of the things I immediately noticed was how well it was directed. You talked a lot about, being given the freedom, and I get the sense that that's how you direct your directors or your actors. I mean, is that you give them that freedom to just, send it full way. And I really love, it's such a weird thing to talk about, but I think from like one director to the other, like you can kind of tell like, oh, I get a feel of how he might go about explaining an actor a scene, or how he might give them the weight of it besides just the words on the page, but as a matter of fact, just beyond that, the visual that it's also representing. Because the acting was phenomenal. Like, can you break down the cast for us? Like so much, because there's so much body language in the way you utilize the cinematography.
What I was gonna say is that it looks like we're all very, very compelled to talk about Does Your Heart Break, and we'll get into Pot Love and True Blue right now. But for Does Your Heart Break, in addition to breaking down just the cast and all that, can you talk about your inspirations for that film? Because I get a very Moonlight feel to it, I get a very... And
that's why I want to bring up the cast. Like, I really want to know, like, who were the actors involved with
That's funny. It's all sort of related. I've never seen Moonlight, ironically.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I know so much about it, but I've actually never seen the film.
Sure.
If there's two existing art pieces that, or artists that really inspired me, Well, First Reformed. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that film.
Sure. Yeah, definitely a First Reformed feel for sure.
That film heavily inspired me. And there's also a group. It's a funny story. Does Your Heart Break is an original story, but it's directly inspired by actually a song of the same name, the same title, Does Your Heart Break. It's written by two fantastic artists, John Art and David Gunger. They formed this group called The Brilliance. They're a Christian. They're sort of like a Christian group, a liturgical group. They call themselves, or used to call themselves. And I sat down with my first draft of a script, and I couldn't get anywhere until I put on some music, and I really felt sort of inspired in one moment. Like I wrote sort of the whole film in a night, and I spent 3-4 months editing the same thing. But it's a great story because, I love that's where the film comes from, because I had the opportunity to speak to the Brilliance.
Oh wow! Great.
I think I saw them in Dallas or Houston or something like that. I drove out there and I met them. I had sent them the script and they didn't reply, but I got an opportunity after their performance to talk, and they said that they had actually seen it, and they have a copy of my script. They have like version
beautiful.
8,
awesome.
like in hand, and we didn't, we had like a sort of brief conversation, a 5-minute conversation about what I wanted to do and where I saw the film going. And they expressed a lot of gratitude, and I think they were really into the idea, and they sort of gave me my blessing. And I mean, it's a student thing, so we went ahead and made the film. And Does Your Heart Break itself, like the concept of, I'm sort of exploring like the thematic element that I'm exploring in the film is the problem of evil, the logical problem or the evidential problem of evil, which is, if God is good, ultimately good and all powerful, why does he allow so much suffering to happen in the world?
I love the dialogue scene between Job and the father, the pastor, and how it goes into that, I think, struggle that a lot of people have when they do ask that question of like, God created good and evil. Like, can somebody explain to me then why are we following this, and why do we believe he's all good if he's saying that,
You know what's cool too, Dalal, in addition to your point and kind of piggybacking off what you're saying, his name. Yeah. The character's name is Job, right? And kind of some biblical significance there. Job loses everything in the Bible, right? He loses absolutely everything. He learns the struggle of having everything and then losing it and then being compensated 3 times back or whatever it was, Right. So I think that's really interesting about this character. He goes directly through that hero's journey of Job. So I think that's super symbolic, man, and super in terms of good and evil. God was literally playing devil's advocate, with Job, and saying, look, man, this guy, he's going to go through his thing, but he's not going to fail me. And I think that's what this film is about too.
The question that got exposed to me is if God is good, and all powerful, and we know that evil happens in the world. Is it because he is unable or incapable of actually stopping evil? Because if he was good, he would want to, there's I think a philosophical argument or a conversation that can happen there. But what I really wanted to showcase in my film is that question is more of a personal thing than a philosophical thing, because the other side of that question is, okay, well, if God is good, he would stop evil, and he doesn't. Is it because he can't, or is it because he doesn't care to?
Yeah, I love that perspective, man, because as coming up, I always felt like any perspective that you have in your spiritual life is completely subjective. Kind of like politics, man. Like I really have a bigger amount of respect for people in religion, clergymen, whatever, and in politics, who don't look down on the people that they're trying to speak to. You know what I'm saying? It's not about looking down on anybody because you think you have more knowledge or you think that you have a stronger connection with God. And I think that's very significant in the point that you're saying. It's completely subjective, and any connection you feel you have with God is yours and yours alone. So I think the journey that your character goes through really reflects that. Like, was he wrong? Well, he needed to go through that to experience his own connection with God, right? To experience just how much of a connection he still has. So I think I think it's completely subjective, and for anybody who's in religion or in politics, yeah, just don't look down on people, man. Like it's my mentality. Don't look down on anybody. Everybody's going through their own journey, and no matter how invested you are in that life, you're not better than anybody. Nobody's better than anybody, you know. So I think that's between good and evil. The Bible says, right, everybody is sin, therefore everybody falls short of the glory of God. So I think it's interesting that everybody's on an even keel, so nobody should be looking down on each other. Everybody goes through their own journey. So I really reflected on that with your film, for sure.
Great. If I may sort of say this, like, I call my sort of split from my faith or my religion as a breakup, because it's very much like a breakup. And it actually coincided with a real life breakup, like a big, serious, used to live with my partner, like 3-4 year like relationship breakup. And
wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah. And, I sort of equated, or I saw a lot of like similarities between the toxic relationship that I was in. The person I was with isn't a terrible person, is a good person, but our relationship is toxic. And God is just like that, like God is so great and magnificent, supposedly and probably, but the relationship that we had was like a toxic relationship. I realized that I have a behavioral disorder called a codependency, and I sort of depend on somebody very close to me, or the people close to me, for me to be fine, good, healthy. And I realized that I depended on God in that way, and my character did, and and the character, being so attached to his mother and the loss of her, like losing that connection is like losing yourself, losing your complete foundation. Sure. And I love what you said about not judging anybody, because everyone sort of comes to their own personal conclusion. Me, if I see myself in Job, in my character, I would sort of, my arc or my personal growth was that I don't actually know the answer of whether God is there, whether he cares or not. But I probably need to come to grips with the fact, or with the idea, that I'm alone and that we're alone.
I'm with you.
But being alone doesn't mean that you're lost, and I think Christian and Catholic thought, it sort of pressures you sometimes, or you pressure yourself into thinking that if we're alone, we are lost. And if we don't have God, or if we don't have a connection with, with something, then we're a lost soul. And realizing that is, in my situation, and probably in the situation of most, not correct, was a maturing moment. That's what I learned from asking this question. Yeah. Even though I don't even answer the question, because I don't know.
No, you're not supposed to.
I don't think anybody
like that
knows.
You talked about the theme of dependency, because similar to you guys, I also grew up in a Pentecostal church. So I was like preaching, or like I was like singing, or what have you. And for a while I did feel very dependent. It's interesting that you bring up that word, because the character not only deals with his religious dependence, but he also depends on the pain. That's sort of what keeps him there. And there's this really cool, I don't know if this was on purpose or anything, but I noticed things like this where, there's a scene where he drops his pills. As the film goes on, later on in the film, he goes through this like very trippy, like hallucinated, like realization where it's not just the pills he depends on, but it's also the cross that he bears. Yeah. And very telling that the mom is the one who puts it on him, and I think that's very, very, that's beautiful storytelling. And, apart from the movie being about religion, it's also about things that people necessarily bear on their own, because we all live a different life and we all bear different things. One of the reasons why I wanted you to bring up the actor was because I think he was I think he was phenomenal. I think he, not only did he deliver a brilliant performance, but I believed every word he said and every look he gave. And, why do you think? Because there's certain things that you tackle that not many filmmakers really dare to, and I think it's really like beautiful what you made, because there's a scene obviously where he sits down and someone scoots away, and you know, like that scene wouldn't really hold the weight it would pertain had it not been someone of color.
Right.
Is there a goal that you have in terms of representation in the things you do? Because I see that you're very fearless when it comes to representation. You're very fearless. Like,
yes, both on screen and off screen. It's funny, like, because the absolute best things that have ever happened in life happened by accident, you know? And I was speaking actually to somebody else about the role, you know, an actor in Albuquerque, a SAG actor, you know, and fate had it to where the circumstances changed, and I had a very vulnerable conversation with my really close friend Edward Lee Davis, who is that actor, who's the actor that I ended up casting, and you know, when Julian and I when we realized that, you know, when I casted and we saw the opportunity for us to represent something that the three of us, all three people of color, sort of can identify and relate with, you know, we came to this like realization that even though there's a religious theme to the film, like we can pack it with a lot of other facets and aspects to it, you know. And yeah, like you said, it wouldn't be the same if it weren't, you know, a person of color. And you know, Evan, the name of the other actor, the one that scoots over, is Evan, also a fantastic professor of mine. It's really funny, man, because, you know, we just finished shooting it, and, you know, he saw dailies, and he's like, man, like you really made me go for like that skinhead white supremacist look. And
he looked.
It's funny. He wasn't originally, like, he wasn't even going to do that. I think we sort of did it like in the moment, or maybe the day before, like we decided that he was going to do it. And you know, everything sort of fell in the right place. Edward was there's nobody else that could do the role, you know, other than Edward. And he's a fantastic actor. He's a fantastic artist. He's one of my closest friends, and very professional guy. But you know, the way that he's explained it to me is that he is almost the exact same person that I wrote into the script, you know, Job. He told me I have to, you know, he said, you know, we went through the exact same thing, and we literally went through the exact same thing and have the exact same experiences. And he told me that what his job was afterward is he had to, you know, somehow bring himself and bring the experiences that he had with with what he's come to know in being my friend, and the things that he's, you know, witnessed me go through. And so it was perfect. I mean, you know, like I don't think anyone could have written it you know, a better way, or decided a better actor than Edward. And I also feel really similarly about Bud Whitty, who plays the priest, also a SAG actor from Albuquerque. He's a person who also identifies with the story very personally, went through almost the exact same thing as well. And you know, he walked into the audition, and I mean, he knocked it out of the park, and so did a lot of other actors. But the honesty that he has, and the honesty that that all of my actors actually have, I think is what made them so great. I mean, everyone is, you know, so many people are great actors, and everyone can do a role. Everyone can sort of do a role justice, but some people, you know, by just the essence of who they are and the things that they carry, and, you know, the story that's written in their hands, and the story that's written in the wrinkles in their face, that, you know what I mean? Like that is casting, you know? And so from a director standpoint, like, all, you know, we had a pretty good extensive rehearsal process, but the work was sort of cut out. I mean, honestly, by the time we got to the rehearsal, I'd say 80% of the work was done because I casted the right people,
Right.
you know, and thankfully, you know, in collaboration with my producer, we put our resources into finding, you know, the right actor, the right actors. And so that, you know, that's sort of where it comes from. And
It's such a interesting scene, that duality between the priest and Job when they're sitting at the confession booth and the camera's going back between each of them. And I mean, it highlights this kind of duality in their perspectives and where they're coming from. And I feel like the casting of, your friend and the priest, and one looking like the stereotypical conservative, like white American male, and then the other one looking like a person of color who's still struggling kind of find their place. And that scene just emphasizes it so well. And I feel like there's no better casting you could have done just visually. And then from their performances, amazing. Yeah. That it all comes across. It helps to emphasize that disconnect that he's feeling and helps the audience really understand that struggle. And I feel like every scene just really pushes that to the next level.
Why do you, so I know that there's clearly a deeper, like your films are like icebergs. At the surface, you can see visually what you're trying to bring forth, but I know that like as you analyze it a little bit deeper, I've only seen it once, man, but I like to think that I have a sharp eye when it comes to feeling somebody's heart, because I believe that stories attract energy, and energy comes from people. So the fact that you were able to, you know, congregate people sort of like a church, a group of individuals who relate to this story and can put themselves in some people in shoes that they would never feel, but still understand the subject matter. I think that's really beautiful. In seeing some of your other works, I did notice that you also use your lens as a tool to make resistant art. You know, I know that I feel like you and I have probably been at the same like rallies or what have you.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like you and I have been at the same rallies or what have you. So like, you know, being a part of Chuco Town, like what sort of things like do you fight for, I guess, besides just, I mean, you're an advocate for storytelling. I can see that, but what else do you advocate for?
Oh, wow. That's leaving El Paso was actually the best thing that could happen to me in terms of my relationship with El Paso. I grew up very whitewashed. All of us do if we go to Texas elementary schools, you know, and sort of moving to New Mexico for some reason, I went through a process that I sort of called like decolonizing my mind. And I think that has been, I think that's one of the things that I most advocate for is like cultural awareness and like I think people really need to understand, like people really need to understand the source of why things are so difficult or uneasy or so polarized, you know? And you know, I could have a long conversation, you know, about how I feel about capitalism, you know, or how I feel about, you know what I mean? Like our government or the two-party system and all of those things. But I just, you know, I have like, I don't know, I have like a progressive fire that just burns inside of me. And honestly, I think it comes from my religious background. Like when I was religious, even though at the time I was pro-life, and I'm definitely not anymore, but like the, you know, in my point, you know, my personal experience, like when I was a pro-life person, it was because I felt like I was doing something.
You're advocating for your
yeah, I was advocating for something that needed to be advocated for, you know, like it was as, you know, it was a force like the wind. You know, you can't see it, but it's there and it's very present, and you need it. You know, you need to breathe and you need to do something about society and about the things that are happening in it. Once I became a little bit more educated, I you know, my perspective and perhaps my political affiliations have matured and changed, but the same desire, I think, is there, you know. And I love talking to Catholics and to, you know, religious people, Christians, about, you know, that sort of like mission, that heart of mission that,
Right.
that, you know, they always said we had. And you know, all of us a lot of us have that, you know, fire. A lot of people don't, you know, and that's fine. But a lot of us do, especially artists. But it's also important, I think, to like realize where your mind is and make sure that you know why things are the way that they are, and what a full circle perspective is. And that has led me, I think, to like the political ideology that I have, and the political involvement that I have, which you know, I think both of us sort of have like the feeling that we identify with, or we're perhaps in like a similar.
Right. And I think it's important, you know, because, you know, there's a, I mean, like we live in a really, like, we're lucky to live here in the US in some respects, in terms of the fact that we want to make films.
Yeah,
because, you know, of course, I'm not one to say I want to go to Hollywood one day. I'd love to, just because why not? But there's also a part of me that's like very like, like they don't align with my beliefs of how we should represent people, not just by saying like, hey, look, it's a person of color, but bringing it down a notch and saying like, well, let's make sure that we're actually like giving them a story to remember, and not just give them a role for the sake of filling in a movie theater seat because you're trying to get graphic.
You
so
know, like
certain things are like that where I'm like, like I hope, and I think that's beautiful, man. I think that this movie, like, had it been a feature, like, yeah, I mean, it's funny that, you know, Carlos mentioned Moonlight. That's a very good movie. I like it myself, but like this movie in particular, like, has that same level of layers where Moonlight was about, you've never seen it, I hope I don't spoil it for you, but it's about being a thug in the hood, but then you're also a homosexual, you know, deep down, and coming to terms with that. And then with your movie, it's about, you know, a religious man tied to trauma, dependent on his religion, and trying to do good on the pulpit, but then still getting criticized for it. So it's like he's torn. Like, So.
And I have a question. I guess this leads to the next film, The Pot Love.
Yeah.
Coming from your religious background, how hard was it to, I guess, do this type of character? Was it around the same time you were questioning your faith, or?
Oh, no, I was well gone. And even then, like, even when I was religious, like I you know, I was never bigoted. Like, I was never, ever bigoted. You know what I mean? And no, I really don't think that's a thing. It's funny. I think I grew up in a pretty inclusive, progressive, religious place. Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so I absolutely love showing pot love to my family, who's most of whom are uber religious, you know, and
was that difficult? Or was that?
No, that was fucking fun, dude. Like, it was super fun, dude. Like, holy shit. Like, we watched it on a Christmas. Every Christmas we get together and we watch movies, and now I make movies, you know? So now we're watching mine. Well, you know, I didn't make that one. Robbie did, but I came out in it. You know what I mean?
Job though. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you. And it was a blast. Like, we were all like, you know, the way that she captured the moment, you know, and the way that our friend who wrote it, you know what I mean? Like, the way that they sort of captured like the tension, especially like in the final scene, is like, I don't know, it's like the cherry on top, you know what I mean? And showing it to my family and showing it to my friends who are religious or were religious, most of them still are. It was a very like, it was I don't know, man. It's like imagine seeing your priest, or imagine seeing like your youth group leader or your youth pastor, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, about to make out with someone. Like, it's weird, but but in a funny way, you know what I mean? Right. That's sort of been my experience, because a lot of the people I had, you know, my you know, my family was culturally religious, you know, but I really sort of brought like the intentional religious. It's funny. I brought my family into the church.
Oh,
not
cool.
really the other way around.
Oh, wow.
I brought a lot of people like spirituality. I was a catechist, so I taught confirmation for 5 years. You know what I mean? Like, and sort of like showing the things that I make to those people is always, I think, a trippy backwards, upside down experience. And it's really fun, man. Like I get a kick out of it. You know what I mean? Like when I showed it to my family, like everyone was glued to the screen and they were screaming, you know what I mean? And just like the tension of the final scene.
You should have seen us watching it. We were like, oh snap, oh snap.
But that's the beauty of it, the reaction. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about like how you got there? Because I mean, it's interesting that you were telling or you told me that was like kind of your start in filming or like into the film world, like, and it was through acting. So like, what led you there? What happened?
Well, I don't really remember. I
love acting as much as directing?
Yes. No, I do. I love it. Like, I am.
You're more passionate about acting?
No, not more passionate. I'm almost I'm a performer, you know, like I'm a musician. I sing, I play, like, and I want to act. Like I really like doing it. And honestly, my directing is informed by my acting. You know, like sure, I took directing classes with Julian, and you know, he sort of helped me form like my artist. But like I learned how to be a director from an actor. Larissa Leary, who plays the mother in my film. Like that's where I learned acting. I mean, that's where I learned directing, because I sort of, you know, learning the other side and learning what an actor needs. I mean, being an actor is fun. I mean, I find it really fun, you know? I ended up casted in that film. I tried out for it and I got cast, and it was actually it was probably like a semester, like end of semester, like make your best film kind of thing. And I
did you audition with that? Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. I made mine, and honestly, it sucked. I didn't even send it to you guys.
Nice.
And I really wanted to. You know, we have a showcase at the end of the year. I was like, I have to be good in something. You know what I mean? Like, so I really sort of put my heart into that film. I'm really proud of that when it came out.
And your audition, did you go subtle or did you go stereotypical?
I don't remember. I mean, subtle, you know, like,
because that's the beauty of it.
Subtlety is key, you know.
Exactly.
Like, well, you know, yeah, subtlety. What's the word that I'm looking for?
It works for this film for sure.
Yeah. The what's the hidden meaning? What's the undertext, or what the heck's
innuendo or?
God damn! How do I?
Michael, you're good with words. Come on, Delo.
Like innuendo, like double entendre, or like what do you mean? I
mean, you know, when in a good scene, you know, two characters speak, but there's always sort of like an underlying reason.
The depth.
The depth.
Iceberg.
Intention.
Yeah. Damn. There's a really awesome word for it, and I don't remember what it is. But whatever that word is.
Hopefully
context. Subtext. The subtext of the film.
Subtext.
I think I related to the subtext, you know, and if I auditioned and if I got the role, I think it's because I loaded it with subtext.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I hope so.
Cool.
I love that you, well, De La O, the way he hyped you up was that you're like a storyteller that absorbs from the world that he like surrounds himself in, and then he like, you know, congregates whatever story like comes out of you. Who are your top 3 storytellers of all time? Like books, film, musician?
Oh, man. You know, it's funny. I always dream about getting asked this question, and every single time I fantasize about it, I have a different answer.
This is your dreams come true in this podcast.
Today, what's your answer?
I mean, like the best storytellers ever. I don't know, like Luke in, you know, like the character in the Bible, like he's, you know,
sure. The educated doctor, Luke.
Prince Roger Nelson. Prince is, I think, my role model in so many ways. And there's another performer, another singer songwriter by the name of John Mark McMillan. People who are religious probably know the name, and he's also you know in that list. Although the list is. I mean, ask me in 20 minutes, I'm going to have a different list.
Yeah, I feel you. I'm the same way. Always changing.
Cool, man.
Prince, though. Prince is my guy.
Top of the list.
Yeah. Something that I remember when we were talking and we were trying to get you scheduled for the show is you brought up this concept that you feel like in there's the idea of music, like the guitar, the camera, and the microphone are all kind of like the same thing to you. All kind of have like this equal weight. And I thought that was a really interesting statement because in my perspective, it's the camera. Like the camera is my window to the world, and I found it interesting how you kind of put all of them at this similar tier for expressing yourself and telling your story. Can you kind of describe like where that idea, I guess, kind of like found itself, or how it maybe cameras got added to the list, or they got put at the same level? Like, give me a little bit of an idea of like where that comes from.
Yeah, I love that concept, that a microphone and a camera are almost the exact same thing. The only difference is like the motherboard, it's the only difference. And the guitar and the body and the voice are the exact same thing, honestly. Like we're both acoustic, real, tangible instruments, and that actually came from my religious time. I wasn't a filmmaker when I was religious, but when I was religious, I was in EPCC at that time. And I sat down with a counselor and I said, look, I have the gospel. It was super freaking cheesy, but I was like, I know the gospel and I want to spread the good news, and I want to communicate my ideas to the world. I just, I was originally studying speech and I said, but I feel like speech is too limited. I can only speak to the people in person, and I want to record my speeches and I want to communicate it to the masses. And she said, well, why don't you do mass communication? I did that, and that introduced me to the camera. Although I realized quickly that mass communication really just means journalism, which is important, but not me, and sort of just became an evolution into filmmaking. And for me, it was like just that desire of communicating. God, it sounds really cheesy, but communicating my ideas and honestly, I think the reason I like the camera, I love the camera, is because I love to document my experiences. And sometimes I fall short of explaining them. And even more so, I fall short of being able to communicate them in person sometimes with people.
Sure.
I'm better at it now, but the camera does a lot of the work that I can't do.
I know a similar feeling, because before I got into filmmaking, before I even thought about getting into cameras and the technical aspect and storytelling, I remember this feeling of thinking that there are ideas that we all have. I mean, in a lesser degree than you would go into like activism, but I felt like there's ideas, these feelings that we all kind of have that I feel need to be expressed or need to be put down somewhere where we could contextualize them, understand them, and other people could know exactly what we're going through. And at first, my journey was through, I did a lot of abstract paintings. I did a lot of colors on canvas to help find a way to contextualize what I was feeling emotionally, philosophically, and that was my medium. And there was a sense of I couldn't get that out. It was like I could communicate it, and to those who viewed it and to those who had their own interpretation, that was fantastic. But I wondered if there was something else out there. And I know that I was looking for some way. I was going into engineering at first, and I wasn't feeling like I had a connection. I was doing what was the stereotypical norm, and I didn't feel like I was communicating. I didn't feel like I was collaborating. I wasn't feeling like ideas were becoming processed and shared with people. And later on, I found the camera, and I remember it started with just a few projects with friends, but then later that evolved into the idea of it being a outlet for storytelling and an outlet for communicating. And for me, it's become now an outlet for understanding the world. Like I understand things now better because I'm able to capture it through the camera and through the microphone,
Michael, I think we make art not because it makes sense, but because we have to.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
That's a great way to phrase it.
Make me cry. I was gonna say, speaking of I feel you, because we could be real. I feel like the vibe is real now. I feel the same way too about how I go about expressing certain things that I hold passion to my heart as well, not just through what my own experiences are, but I like to say that we have to fuse. My bad. I've always said that we've had to learn how to fuse our experiences to some degree, because similar to we're all tied through emotion. We're very emotional human beings. And no matter what skin we wear, no matter what shoes we've bared or what things we carry, like the emotions we've all felt can be talked about, and we can always find common ground in terms of how something made us feel. And, you know, you talked a lot about your perspectives and a lot about, you know, how you convey how you communicate what you hold dear and near to your heart. Can a story change one's perspective? Is that sort of like how you see it? Should that be the goal? Or if not, what should be the goal of putting your perspective or your opinions out there through a story or through medium or through art? How De La O was saying, like, that's very like therapeutic. Like,
I mean, I guess in theory, the goal should be, you know what I mean, to change the world or to change people's perspective. But honestly, like that's kind of, I see it as impossible. You know, I don't think you can act. I mean, people's minds can change, and you can make something. You know, if you just happen to do it right, you know, you can impact some kind of change, and it's probably definitely an avenue worth traveling down. But the way that I sort of see it is the only way that how I relate to film and I relate to music. And I think, like, when I see stories that have changed, quote unquote, changed how I see or feel about things, it's what really happened is they reminded me about a feeling that I already had. Like they sort of triggered or activated a feeling, a desire, a perspective that I have, but perhaps I sort of suppressed through the things that I've learned or the propaganda I've received or you know, and that's really it. You know what I mean? Like, I was a conservative person for not that long, but for a while, you know, but I remember when I was a kid in art school, like in 5th grade, they showed us a video about the difference between, like, you know, 2 political parties. And I remember I was like, I really identify with that leftist side, you know what I mean? But as I grew up and I learned things, I sort of went this way, and you know, watching films that, you know, The Revenant, Black Klansman, like films like that, like I think they sort of, like, I don't know, they activated how I feel about things, like, innocently, how I like feel about them as a kid, as a person, you know? Right. And I think my role in having some kind of impact, social impact in film is, I mean, it's rooted in activism, but with the idea or the theory that I can remind people about the things that they actually believe in, so that they can get rid of the things that they momentarily believe in. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, people, like when I was talking about the pro-life situation, not that being pro-life I see as negative. That's not my point, you know, but the desire and the impulse that you have when you are, you know, genuinely a pro-life person is the same impulse, I think, that is present when you say Black Lives Matter. You know what I mean? Like, those, like, real life living people's lives matter too, and we need to protect that life. You know, I'm like, it's the same thing. Well, not, but that feeling, like that innocent feeling that we actually have is real. And I think as artists, it's our job to activate that, is to remind people of the things that they actually believe in, but perhaps have forgotten over time.
There's a quote that
love that passion, man,
said, where he says, like, when I make a movie, like, I want them to feel like they watched like a dozen movies. Like, I want them to feel like they watched a horror movie, and, you know, an action movie, a drama, romantic, comedy. I found myself kind of like realizing that it should be the same way in terms of what the thematic themes you go for on a movie. You know, like, you have to, and that's what I liked about your film, that it wasn't just about one certain theme. It was like several different themes. And, you know, by the end of it, maybe the person who's watching it, who knows what they believe, right? But regardless, you planted a seed, and similar to how propaganda works, right? If they start to see these different kinds of stories that are telling different kinds of things, eventually something will click. And for maybe a split second, like, they'll think differently. But the point is, you got that flicker to go on. And I think that's the goal as a filmmaker. For me, I think it's like just to get a flicker on them. Like,
it's beautifully articulated. I think you're spot on.
So before we close this wonderful conversation, I mean that so genuinely, Can you tell us what's next on your journey, either as a
There was
filmmaker
so
or
much
as a person?
passion. Now we're interested.
I know.
in
What's next?
for
You told us. You said, I don't want you to promote anything, and you left us wondering. Well, now what?
We gotta know now.
Can't. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
What's coming?
Yeah.
What's happening?
Maybe it's a collaboration with Tower. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I'm kidding, Carlos. Sorry, man.
No, yeah, I love working with everybody, and what's coming next is the immediate thing that's coming next is I'm going to grad school. I'm still in the process of applying, and COVID really messed everything up. I'm supposed to be in Austin, Texas right now because I'm trying to get into UT, but
nice.
Yeah, the majority of schools that I'm actually applying to are in Europe. They're actually not. I think I'm only applying to like 3 in the US. So that's what's next. And I think I'm pretty confident I'm going to end up like in the UK or in France. And so because of that, I'm in terms of film production, I am producing some things right now, and I really have them sort of under wraps. I'm working on some ideas. I'm developing them into scripts, but I'm not completely sure as of like today how those things are going to pan out and where they're going to pan out. I guess the one plug or the one thing I want to put out there is that I am looking for collaborators and I'm looking for producers. I produce, but I'm a director, I love acting and things. I'm a musician and there's a million things I have to do. I'm also working on a record, like completely like on the side. So if there's anybody listening, or if any of you, are producers and want to keep doing the things that I'm talking about, like I need a lot of help. I need a lot of assistance. I'm changing I need a change of scenery, so I'm changing it. I'm literally going to a different continent, there's a lot, there's a lot going on, but it's all sort of behind the scenes, and I'm a slow cooker. I do things right. It's kind of unfortunate because I'm a slow cooker in a fast business, but things are happening. They're just there. I do them right. So
when the next project comes up, you're welcome back here. We'd love to hear about it.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's been amazing having you. All right.
Today we have for the good word of the day.
Yeah.
Michael de la O for Carlos Jr.
So for people who don't know, season 2, we have a word of the day that we ask all of our guests. This is just to push communication. Carlos, can you tell me the definition of sillage?
Sillage, no.
Have you ever heard of sillage?
Sillage, no.
We can bring it around the room. Does anybody have a guess what sillage is?
Nope.
So sillage is the amount that a perfume sprayed on a person lingers and how much that actually connects with people. Now, that might sound abstract. Like, what the hell? Like, why did this guy bring it up?
You're going to class every day, man.
I think, just as perfume can kind of linger and the essence that is on a person can fill a room, I think like you, it's something that you might have not known that I remembered you and heard about you, but you've definitely lingered. So it's definitely it's something that's definitely stayed connected. We could spread that.
You're going to make me red, Michael de la O.
Wow, that was
a good setup. Nice.
Cool. All right, Mr. Juan.
Well, I guess that about does it for us towering filmmakers. Just give me a moment. I'm going to pull up the outro.
Everybody go check out Carlos.
Please check out Carlos. Where can we find you, Carlos?
You can find me on Instagram. I'm at Carlos Jr. _. I have a lot of interesting things that are going to be on that Instagram soon. So
nice.
I'd like
go check that out.
People to be there. Yeah.
Very cool.
Okay. I got mine.
Oh, also, I'm building a website, carlosjr.com. You can also visit me there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Should be live very, very soon too.
We'll put that in the
Very
link
cool.
below.
That about does it for these towering filmmakers. As always, keep writing your scripts, keep pushing through writer's block. And if you haven't heard it from anyone else besides your mama, then you'll hear it from us. We believe in you and all the hard work you're bringing to your moving pictures. Don't forget to look at your call sheet Don't you dare say fix it in post. That's the Baltimore to filmmaking crazes right there. And remember to send over your love, your appreciation towards all your cast and your crew for all the hard work we know that you're doing. Towering filmmakers will see you guys on set.
Love you guys.
Bye.